Hello and welcome to Two Blokes in a Cave, a vaguely philosophical podcast hosted by me, Carlton Sin, a classicist and part-time serious chess player, my good friend Cameron, who is the resident philosophical expert and former future child model.
I'm back, baby.
It's just an exceptionally good-looking man. This is a true story. I'm not making this up.
It's a true story.
This is true. There have been more than one lady that hasn't met you that have messaged me like, hey, what's up with Cameron?
Hasn't met me.
Hasn't met you. Has met me.
What photos are you sending them?
Send them
Brad
zero
Pitt,
photos.
circa 2020.
Who's this? It could be Cameron.
Could be anyone, really.
It could be. I mean, what is a photograph of Cameron Wright? So that's interesting.
You're sending it out on Marketplace. Give you $20 if you reply to this text. Hey, Cameron, heaps of ladies coming on.
So what I'm trying to say is, hide your wife. Hide your kids. Cameron's
I'm a rapist. Isn't that where that story comes from? Hide your wife. Hide your kids. Here comes Cameron, the former future child model, to come and talk to your fucking children. Oh, here I come. Hide your kids. Come on first.
That was terrible. That was not. The intention was, you're a cool guy.
Thanks, mate.
And well sought after.
Okay. I know.
What a turn. That's a great thing.
I know exactly what he's talking about. We're just taking the piss. It's a piss center. It's all what it is. In reality, huge player. I'm not. I'm just a normal guy. I just live my life.
He's a sweetheart. Okay, brilliant. Well, with that out of the way, what are we doing today, Cameron? What's the
with
podcast?
last discussion, we went off and on for a bit because we were a bit unsure about this one. But we were going on this. I think it's Sorites, or it's spelled Sorites Paradox, but Sorites Paradox, and it's like a paradox. It's a Greek word, and it's a Greek thing about the paradox of categorization and categorizing and distinguishing between different concepts. So I'm going to read a little bit of it because it's probably better worded in this than I could probably put. But basically, at what point does a small change in quantity lead to a change in quality? The Sorites Paradox is one of the philosophical thought experiments which ventures into the nature of limits of how we define them. And here as it follows. Imagine a mound of sand has millions of grains. The pile of sand is unaffected by the removal of one grain. And even if another grain is removed, it's still a sand pile. This cycle continues until only a few grains of sand are left. When does the sand mound stop becoming a pile? In other words, when does a small change in quantity cause a big difference in quality? It poses significant issues regarding on how we classify things, happenings, experiences, and then how does one category differ from another? The ramifications of comprehending decision-making processes. It can also lead into moral judgments, political categorization. Jesus. All right, here we go. And scientific classification. Just changing from sand to tangible objects. So I hope that vaguely. I mean, it says at the bottom here, the paradox forces us to reflect on the limitations of language and how the categories we employ make sense to the world and how we see it. And that's part of the issue I have with going too deep in this because it's a bit of a language factor. But
a lot of honestly, a lot of arguments between people, if you can take a step back and remove the emotive control and just look at something. A lot of it is people just talk past each other because they don't understand
it's true.
what they're trying to say. Like at a core level, I'm not saying there's no differences between humans and we have obviously different feelings on things, but oftentimes the source of disagreement is less about this point that we're talking about and more about the way we're describing getting there.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think...
I don't like the way you approach that. And therefore I'm going to come this way and make it,
Yeah. It's almost like the inverse, I think, of our politics in aggregate. How it's changed from in the 1950s, maybe you'd see Nixon and JFK debating.
Right.
And they would talk very eloquently about your plan and my plan, though we take different paths, we are looking to get to the same goal. And that's been a fairly traditional understanding of inside a nation we debate, we have the same goals, but now I think we're kind of starting from, we're actually fairly similar, but we have these radically different ways of kind of trying to articulate what we're trying to do, which I think is probably the main issue, because this is essentially like the beard paradox,
it's the beard,
right?
One.
Yeah,
like how many?
Is this a beard?
Is that one hair a beard?
Yes, exactly.
Or
when
is
does it
a mole?
become a beard? My dermatologist is not sure.
I don't know what that is. Aren't you a dermatologist?
Yes.
Come on, man.
Removing that next week. Don't worry about it.
We can remove it if you want. No.
So what? Yeah. So the paradox itself is interesting, I guess, because it does. I think it, like many allegories and analogies that we use in sort of philosophy, they are the base idea is there to make the idea easy to grapple with, but it's actually really talking about something else. I mean,
usually. Or has ramifications.
Typically does. I mean, I think the ship of Theseus is very obviously an allegory for human nature and how we change and are we the same person and what that means for if you make an error or commit a crime, should that crime carry with you for 20 years if you've served your time, things like that. And obviously we've done the ship of Theseus incredibly well. Check out our video on that.
We're going to link it down here. No, we're not.
Brendos is going to link it down here, which is brilliant because he does all the magic editing, which is great. But that would be an example of the ship of Theseus. You can easily debate it because there's no emotions. It's just like, oh, it's a ship. Let's talk about it. Like, what are the ramifications? How does it go? But then when you talk about maybe a criminal and rehabilitation, and should that person be given a chance in society, that person always carries the baggage of their whole life. Yeah. Even if they have metaphorically replaced those parts of themselves. Again, check out our video on the ship of Theseus. It's a great listen. But this one is speaking more about the incremental change and when does, I'm thinking of an example top of my head, which is pretty extreme, but like if someone killed a pregnant woman, you go, well, that's a double murder. A pregnant woman.
Oh, a pregnant one, yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be like a double murder because you've killed two people. Do you know what I mean? I think that's how that's prosecuted still, which is kind of crazy.
I mean, it seems worse than a non-pregnant murder.
It does, because there's a second person being murdered. That's the sticky wicket there. It's the multiple people being murdered.
Yeah, that's really the issue. Yeah,
they don't like it. I think when you go to court, they're like, how many people did you murder, Jim? 7. That's worse.
It was only one person, but you did 2 stabs. Why was that?
To make sure.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So when does the grain of sand one, we'll go through this analogy, I think, and then try and apply it to maybe the broader context and perhaps even what the paradox, the sort of analogy, allegory is really trying to address in our human society and what that means. So you've got a mountain of sand here. No one, I don't think, could make an argument that if you had 1 million pieces individually of sand grains, removing one of them would make any material change to the mountain of sand.
Yeah, pile of sand.
And conversely, if you had 2 grains of sand, or 1 grain of sand, you go, well, that's just 1 grain of sand. Is 2 grains of sand a mountain? and this is the part where it gets tricky, because I kind of know where you're kind of coming from this, which I tend to agree with. But it is, I think, a limitation of our language more than it's a limitation of the paradox itself. So why don't you give us your, kind of the answer you have come to, the conclusion you've come to with this paradox, and then we can kind of have a quick chat around like why there's some inaccuracies maybe in the literal language we have to describe what we're seeing.
Well, yeah, I think we might have mentioned this randomly after another podcast like a few weeks ago, but I think I read this and was like, okay, cool. I vaguely remember this in some way, shape or form. It's like the way we categorize stuff, we've got to put a label on a pile of sand. It's a pile. And the one that's like half the size is still a pile. But if you really look at it, my conclusion was like 1 grain of sand is a grain of sand. Yep. 2 grains of sand is technically a pile. And then from then on out, it's just like the size of the pile.
A varying degree.
Yeah, right. And so you could solve this. You could solve it right there, done. But like the point being is, we have to put labels on groups of things in order to like understand them in the physical world and to move on and talk about stuff with meaning and tangibility. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
And that's when it's like that's a categorization issue. That's a language issue. If we could define pile as being more than 2,
well, that's what I was going to say.
It's solved. The thing.
Yeah, the issue is really
like
with
whatever.
English and our inadequate way of describing definitively. Like, if I said to you, a group of people walk by, that could be, in my mind, anything from 3 people to 300. Probably, like, technically infinitely.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, I mean, again, for me, it's probably 3 people would make a group, and then you'd have like a person, 2 people, a group of people. But that's
very logical.
Very logical.
Whereas, like, if you're having a conversation with someone and someone has a very large piece of paper, and someone's like, I've got a statement from you. I'm the cops, and I want you to tell me what the hell just happened here. Someone stabbed someone ran away, and that person gives you a very lengthy, complex set of English paragraphs, and at the end they go, they're talking from their own machinations of their own head. You don't know what they actually mean by groups. They could say a group, and they mean like, in their experience, because they lived in a commune of 500 people their whole life, a group's 40 people. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And you don't really know that unless you like break down every single individual premise of their story, and that's where people talk past each other. I think that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think picking up and just to finish that thought, I think is a good one. Is translating work from English to German, or even I think you probably, I'm not 100% sure with Australia, but you probably could do even like a Brisbane kind of parlance to Melbourne. Right. There is like a different vernacular. I've got cousins in Melbourne. Sometimes they say things to me and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm talking about Cheerios. They're like, what, little boys? I'm like,
please stop saying you're going to eat a bunch of little boys. That's not good.
I picked up a bunch of little boys from the deli the other day. I'm like, what? Kilos worth? It's crazy.
I call the police. Isn't you? What's going on here?
We're referring to the little cocktail winners, by the way, if anyone's paying attention. The different names across different states.
Which is the point, right? Like, and it could be a case of we just can't adequately succinctly describe what's happening to us.
Yeah.
And we know there's a huge amount of our mental energy that goes into social cues and trying to organize ourselves to not die. Yeah. So it's hard to, it takes a lot of mental effort, which you can probably tell we haven't put a lot into tonight, but like a lot of mental effort into describing things that happened in a more objective, or I don't like, I'm loath to say scientific sort of, this is what happened, cold and clinical. And I think that speaks to this, because I do tend to agree the paradox is essentially change. A pile, if my son has 5 blocks and he puts 2 of them, like that's a pile of blocks. That's like, you know what I mean?
2 is a pile.
There is potentially an element of like a numerical ratio thing, but that's a more like a mathematical distinction, but it doesn't really change the English word distinction of like, well, what is it here? We would kind of laugh on it on the face and say, well, that's silly. There's 1 million grains of sand. 2 can't be the same as 999,000.
That's right, yeah.
But there isn't actually a word that very specifically and clearly defines like what is different. This is just a pile of 2 times many numbers.
Yeah, it's not discrete. It's not a pile is exactly this. And the thing is this, it's like a fluctuating thing, and overuse over time, even using it, the pile definition might change. Pile might be something that's way bigger if we keep talking about it, and the word starts to become elongated and
there's
stretched.
No reason to think that the pile is limited by a numerical number. But we conceptually, and again, this is partly the issue I think with our limitations of mind. Like I don't know if you at home can, but perhaps you have many more friends than I do. It's hard to actually think about 100 individual people.
No, it's impossible.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like it's really difficult for me. Like I have some really good friends, but like maybe 5 or 6 really good friends, and then my family, and then people that I know through work and sort of acquaintances.
The circle theory. You got the close family, friends, acquaintances, people you can push in and out of the circle at any time. People you pass in the street potentially.
It's just hard to think about 100 people, I think. And I think that's a fairly, again, I'm biased, so I think it's standard, but that might not be. Maybe again.
Well, I think meaningful relationships you can't hold up any more than
you can't. I mean,
what are you doing, Jono? Oh, there's 100 other people to reply to. Shut up.
Exactly. And, there is a diminishing returns thing going on there, and that's the same as this. It's like there is a point where we are arguing semantics. There's no tangible difference here. Like I acknowledge, so does everybody that would say 2 is the same as the 900,000 plus. We're just saying that the only difference is there's more over there.
It's a bigger pile.
It's a bigger pile.
You've got to put an adjective or whatever somewhere in there. Yeah.
So like no one's saying it's of equal value, but it is clearly not 1, but it is also not 1 million. But if we had to put it, to summarize, it'd be 2 grains of sand is actually closer to 999,000 than it is to 1.
Mm.
Because
Yeah,
the 2
fair enough.
grains is a pile.
Yeah, okay,
1
that's
is
what
not
you
a
said.
pile. It's not a numerical thing. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like the 2 grains of sand are a pile of sand.
Yeah.
It just happens to be a very, very small pile of sand.
That's
One grain of sand is not a pile of sand.
Yeah.
It categorically is not.
But-
Therefore,
Yeah.
the small pile of sand is more closely related to a giant pile of sand, even though mathematically it sounds ridiculous.
Than an individual
Than it is.
object.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's...
Well, I was just thinking now you're talking about this. Now it's come to me randomly. What happens if you
Perfect.
took that one singular grain of sand and you just like cut it into 2? And it's the same thing it was before, but now it's a pile.
It's half. Yeah, that's crazy. That's
Yeah,
a very,
right.
very...
And then I was thinking to myself, like, you're Carlton. This is a Carlton.
This is one.
If I chop off your finger, is that a Carlton? I've divided you.
This is actually...
You're not discrete.
yeah.
Where's the continuousness from
This
you?
is
in
what
the
I
beginning?
think
Yeah.
this paradox is about.
Yeah.
In a way. Like, again,
I
I'm...
think all these paradoxes actually end up bleeding into the fucking ship of Theseus.
So the
at some
problem, the
stage.
problem is, if you are, and I encourage you all to be a romantic, go and
Right.
read a bunch of William Wordsworth,
Yeah, he's
get on
good.
board. It's very good. And like just being romantic, everything about life is about humans. So I'm always just like, yeah, this grains of sand thing's really about people.
Hey, would you like to
Go
try
figure.
my Thai curry I just cooked? Thai curry is really just about emotions.
It's just about how
Are you
you
feeling
can
okay?
feed me. Exactly. Come give me a-
You've actually put capsicum in this. Get out of here. No, I'm just
that is a crime against all the humans. What
Yeah,
would you
yeah,
say? Because
yeah.
to answer this, and I think this actually goes to one of my more interesting points of discussion with you and with producer Brendos when we're not.
He's
just
away this
ripping it.
week, just right now. We are
He is away.
fiddling with this without him.
And seriously, we miss him.
Yeah.
So
Took
we
a while
want
to-
producer
In fact, we
Brendos
don't
to
even know
go
this
back.
is recording at all, actually. It
We
could
are
potentially be
hoping
off.
it's recording because some of this stuff's been great. If I lost my finger,
Yeah.
I am still Carlton. My finger
right.
is not Carlton.
No, not by itself. No.
The finger, you can
So
flip
that
away.
means the finger is not Carlton.
It's irrelevant when removed from Carlton.
So which part
What
do you
is
remove?
Carlton?
Yeah,
But
right.
how much can you remove of Carlton?
It gets real tricky once you
It
start
gets,
cutting
well,
into
I don't know how.
torso.
This is how I would say. Like, if you are alive and have your mental faculties, say, like you're a quadriplegic, you're still Cameron.
Yeah, okay. fair
Everything about you is Cameron. Your mind, dare I say the soul, is Cameron, right?
Yep.
Your physical body, and this is my view of sort of Catholic teaching, is your body is not yours. It's kind of like a gift from God, and you're a custodian of it, and you should honor it and, you know, work out and look good and all the rest of it and take care of yourself.
It's a good
right?
premise.
But it's not yours, and we're very possessive in the modern world. But this is not my body. This is just that I inhabit this body. You could, and this is not to say that I agree with the sort of transhuman take my brain into a computer thing, but
Right, yeah.
but the essence of me is my mind, my ability to put together sentences. I mean, if I was, you know, a quadriplegic in a wheelchair and I couldn't throw the football, throw a pretty tight spiral. If I couldn't play football anymore, run
That's
around,
really a defining feature.
it's one of
If you couldn't
this
do that, I'd be a little bit.
well, I was going to say we should be mates, but maybe not.
I'm not sure.
I wouldn't be so confident.
Here's my friend. They get the spiral. Yeah. Fair enough.
But you know, we would still be like, yeah, Carlton, we're still buddies. We can still hang out and
Yeah.
chat around, and because it's horrible.
Yes.
He can't throw anymore.
No.
But we'd still, you know, the person I would expect to be treated with the same level of dignity and have the same appreciation of you, albeit differently, but we'd still be friends.
Yeah, I think most people wouldn't.
Do you know
would
what I
argue.
mean?
That's still you.
Because
You're
it's
chilling.
still you,
It's still
for
you.
sure. But and I guess this is one of the ways I would say to prove that theory. If I was knocked on the head and unfortunately was a vegetable and my body was perfectly healthy, nobody really thinks like, well, that's Carlton over there, because everyone kind of acknowledges like, yeah, the body is just a.
Just throw a brutal spiral at you, see if you move.
Yeah.
As in
Do you
your
know what I mean?
vegetable state.
How
No,
about
100%.
this? How about this?
Consciousness.
For,
consciousness
is the
factor.
thing. So how would this sit with you? Imagine a world where my body completely breaks down, but my
Yep.
mind is, you know, the Futurama, where they have those like floating heads in the
Yes,
the
yeah,
water, and they're just
yeah.
talking, and they're like,
Yeah.
"I'm Richard Dixon," and he's
Ooh,
yeah. imagine that is on one side. On the other side is my body, which is perfectly intact and working brilliantly.
Fair.
But there's no mind there.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many people, I think, that would say Carlton is
You are
the
the
body.
Yeah.
That would think that I am the mind.
You are the body. Unless your body was your defining feature, like Elle Macpherson. No, I'm just joking. Yeah. I would agree. I think most people would argue that that's not the case. Well, in the Futurama, they put the head on like, it's just a fucking, just some sort of robotic body.
Yeah, for sure.
Running mark.
But yeah, the point is like Richard Nixon is the head. Do you know what I mean? He sits in the head. Right. He's chilling.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean.
He can't do this though. Yeah.
I do like Richard Nixon.
No comment.
He seems like a pretty accomplished guy. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like,
he's better in hindsight when I look back than his caricature.
You know what? Fair. On a side way, like a lot of people look back at historical figures and they're so quick to nitpick. Like he wasn't perfect. Well, I got news for you. No one's perfect except this one guy. And we crucified him. So it's it did not end well for him.
Yeah.
But no one is perfect. Everyone, even great people, universally admired people.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King had areas of his life that like, hey, that doesn't live up to the ideals that you preach. I
agree.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think we can still honor Martin Luther King and say, hey, really love what you're doing. With some of these civil rights stuff, think that's really brilliant. And also go, hey, but there are things you did that I don't agree with, but I can still honor your memory and what you did really well. And I think part of that is actually a virtue. Like it is charitable to look at people and go, hey, everyone is fallen, everyone has vice.
In a favourable light.
Yeah. Sure. And it's also, again, it is a kind of sad way to live life if you're constantly looking at people that have done great things in the past, things that, without being rude, like you would never achieve, the people that make mean comments would never achieve. It's kind of a sad way to live life, and it speaks more to the kind of internalized hatred you must have of yourself.
There's something off there, and I think we're coming to realize that over time, because
it's getting a bit out of control.
Hate's easy.
Hate is easy, and it's like the devil's cocaine. That's what they say.
You know what else is the devil's cocaine? Cocaine. Anyway, so like we say, I think we referenced at the very beginning when we're talking about arguing past each other, but like you've got to give everyone a very a sort of leeway to their points. You've got to give a very favourable view of everyone's points to give them like a critique, right? It's a good way to go about it. So you can't jump down the neck and be like, this idiot here, like, I don't know, when he was 20, like ran over 3 dogs and therefore we should like get rid of his entire thesis. Like, I mean, we don't know any of these people. We're never going to meet Martin Luther King. I mean, this guy could be like boring in his spare time, just as a personal level. Yeah. But you just got to take in what you know, what the theories are, what the commons, there's actual beliefs, and then you got to, as an ego thing, you can't say like, I'm better than you, this guy's a dickhead, blah, blah, blah. Step back. What are the beliefs? You'll never know.
One of the things I really appreciate about you are a very good listener.
Oh, thanks, mate.
So you're a very good listener.
Likewise.
Thanks, mate. And this is, we had a fire a little while ago. Great time to sit down and chat with the boys. And we were talking about some pretty big topics that we're not all on the same page. Obviously, I'm the resident papist. Producer Brendos is agnostic. Cameron's spiritual.
It's somewhere in the middle. It was a bit of an interesting little.
It was a good little time.
Chat,
What made it so interesting to me, to you, to Brendan, I think, Brendos, was that when anyone was giving their sort of thoughts, hey, can you explain this? It was a very Socratic, like, tell me more about this. I don't understand what you mean. And we were able to, and again, obviously we're friends, so maybe that's easier, but in general, it's a much easier way to understand what people are talking about. If you go, like, I actually don't understand what your point is.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me why you came to this conclusion, or how you came to this conclusion, and why you think X, and can you explain it? As opposed to being ready to interject, coming at these people with a ready-made conclusion.
For sure.
So I think, when you're talking about, God, women in the universe, big topics that are very prone to...
with a couple of bevs,
disagreements, or like at least, like I'm a Catholic. Brendos is agnostic. So when we're talking, we are talking from different places, but we're not adversarial to one another, but we're talking from different places, and it would be very easy and maybe natural because of the way discourse is carried out in the modern time for an objection to be made by either one of us and to interject and say, that's actually not what I believe. That's not what I think. That's not the right theory. Shut you down and try and be like, I got to win. I prove that you don't know what you're talking about. As opposed to, again, just doing what we're doing, really cool guys. And just be like, hey, actually, what's going on with this? Shroud of Turin. Oh, it's real. That's really cool.
Maybe, which is in the news for some reason. I feel like it's a big deal.
Let's talk about the savior of humanity being a big deal.
Well, yeah, I agree with you.
Get on with that.
We were having a good thing, and I think the fire is a bit of a conduit for that because we sat there and we listened to each other's point lengthy en masse without interruption. Yeah, and then at the end we're like, well, I get what you're saying. What do you mean by this? I know about that. And then someone will be like, oh, I'm not too sure. But zero judgment, just a flopping around ideas. And there is naturally batting heads at points, but like the fact at the end we're kind of like we're both like edging away, even if it's the bare minimum, we're just like concreting our own secret ideas, or not even positions, but like what do I actually think? Oh, I'm chipping away and making it more formed. That's really what I take away from a go away. That was hella fun. Because like really, because like I'm like you don't think about that shit by yourself. You do, but you can't think about it as in depth. It's good to do it with people because the other person's going to bring up something you're not going to think about ever. Yeah,
like Aristotle didn't appear out of nothing. Like he had Plato. Do you know what I mean? Like
an actual cave. I mean, if he is,
do you know what I mean? Like there are very few people I think you could get out of the cave by themselves. You need a buddy.
Yeah, you do.
Who's an expert in philosophy?
Actually, that could be the most profound thing we've talked so far. So we've figured out after 10 episodes that Socratic and/or Aristotelian dialogue is the way to get to the truth. Well, shit.
That's what it's all about. Just asking why. You know what we said in like episode 3? Just be a toddler. Just sit there and be like, why?
Yeah.
That's actually probably low-key the best way to learn anything.
It is. But then sometimes you look at the Socratic one and he's like, but why? And then someone says, like, I actually have the answer, you little shit. And he's like secretly sitting back like, oh no, you know, shit all. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I do love it. I remember I watched a podcast for uni about this professor who wasn't a big fan of Socrates for some reason. I never actually... I potentially
I've met too many people who don't like Socrates.
I seem to be very pro Socrates. He's like a
he doesn't stand behind anything so ridiculous.
He doesn't really have any. Like his whole thing is a lot of some very interesting parallels to Jesus in a lot of ways. Right? Actually, like both of them died for truth.
Socrates
died for truth. When he could have just been like, all right, I'll peace out. Because Aristotle left Athens in exile.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, they were going to kill him. And he was like, I'm actually just going to leave because I can. And I don't know why Socrates didn't do that. I'm out of here. See ya.
You don't have to live in Athens, idiot.
we can move anywhere.
There's a whole world out there. Oh, yeah.
But, Socrates, on the other hand, said, I will die for the truth.
Yeah, that's right.
And Christ is the truth.
Yeah.
And they died because of it. And I think it's interesting as a side, like I want... this is I was talking about my wife after the fire, and we're talking about the problem with that specific topic about like a God and the universe.
We were really getting on the religion thing, weren't we? Yeah.
It was huge. It was very, very interesting. But the problem is like it's like that is like a 3-month conversation they're trying to have in one night. Do you know what I mean? Like it's such a massive conversation.
What is the church?
Yes, and there's so many intricacies, and and there's a lot of misinformation about stuff that you're like, oh, well, that's actually not what I would consider canon,
right?
And that is a perversion or a heresy in the 3rd century that we've kind of gone past. Anyway, we'll get Father Officer on, and he can dispel.
Well, we're really trying to pick apart shit that I think none of us knew the answer to. Well, you know more than us, but
maybe
even then we're kind of like, hang on, we're kind of like.
Well, there's definitely things that I'm like, I don't pretend to know all the secrets of the universe.
But that's also a fundamental thing. Is I actually fundamentally think I don't know anything. Like Plato said himself.
That's what makes us such good friends. We're just walking around like, what do you know? No idea.
That's right.
Got no thoughts rattling around.
You know so much that you don't know shit. No, I don't know anything. Yeah.
Just, trying to learn, understand your limitations is probably super key.
Yeah.
And this is about people.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know what your, how controversial you want to get with this, but what we could do
Let's do it. At least a dive in within a sec.
I'll tell you what.
Don't have to go down the
If it's really controversial, you'll never see it because Brendos will cut it out. So
we'll be like... And then it'll cutscene will be different clothes. And we'll be like, yeah, what about that paradox?
The weather? How good's that?
What about that paradox, dude? I've got a beard, like, yeah. Sure I did.
It's been so many months. Brett won't let us leave.
I've been in jail. No, I'm just joking.
If the measure of change is what this paradox is fundamentally about.
It is.
Measuring change, and when, again, I do think you hit the nail on the head here with a lot of this is kind of ship with Theseus.
Yeah.
A lot of philosophical dilemmas are either utilitarian or ship with Theseus. That's really
we're talking about the one
ones.
last week with the Into the Matrix. Halfway through the Matrix one, I did think to myself, this is vaguely the ship of Theseus. I think it's a categorization, identity paradox.
Yep.
And who are you? What are you? Where are you? It's all the same shit. It's just in a different form, which
like,
is a bit of a...
On a side note, my all-time favorite meme is the astronaut looking at Earth with the other astronaut behind him with a gun to his head, and the first guy makes a really a really basic point, like, "Wait, it's all suffering." The guy behind's like, "Always has been," and just blows his head up. It's like all time. It's the absolute. It is the best meme. I love it so much.
Layered.
It's so good. Yeah, it's such a good meme, and that part of I guess. Philosophy is essentially like, wait, we don't know anything, never have, and then we just try really hard, but we know nothing.
open the book and there's nothing in it. What?
Damn, exactly. Okay, the nature of change.
Yeah,
you've known me for a very long time. You're welcome. I'm just joking. You've known me for a long time. When I was a bachelor, our friendship was very different.
Right.
I guess, you know what I mean? Like with the boys out and about, but like we probably interacted in a way that two bachelors would interact, I suppose, like having fun, a bit more carefree, chilling. Yeah. I'm married now with children, which is great.
Now we have to lie about that part. No, I'm just
Liz knows everything. No, it's good. Is there a change in me that you have noticed? Or would you characterize or categorize the death of Bachelor Carlton?
Ooh, the death.
And the rebirth of new Carlton, married Carlton?
I mean, it's interesting because I don't like viewing it in the way of like death of a persona.
Well, it does make you feel sad about marriage.
No,
marriage is great, but like it's the end
negative.
of an era.
Yeah, maybe the rebirth of some form of like Phoenix. I don't know.
I am very Phoenixy.
Well, when I knew you would, from the beginning, you would have been like 21.
Yeah, I think so. Very young.
Yeah, so the difference between that and now is like vaguely chalk and cheese anyway.
Really,
so like,
I can grow a mustache now. So
yeah, you did try for a long time.
It was not strong. It was a reverse Mario. It was terrible.
I'm talking like I could do it too. I can grow a dirty beard. Let's be real.
It was awful.
But anyway, yeah.
But that's change, right? That's change in a person.
You have changed.
Yeah.
But have you evolved or changed?
Yeah.
There we go. Categorization again. I'm actually just using different words to vaguely say the exact same thing. I mean, are we talking about like you can't put your foot in the same river twice type of thing? And like,
well, yeah, that's
the
part
function
of
of time and everything's always changing. Like you've physically changed. You've got older.
I've lifted weights.
Got smarter. Your voice has probably got slightly deeper. You know, like this little
just a much more manly guy now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Less blemishes.
Got these university degrees. Just
you've
a
learned some
big
stuff, right?
Big guy.
Yeah,
cool guy.
Yeah, I'm not saying you were crummy before because we're all crummy.
But comparatively, you sucked basically
to yourself now. Nice. No,
that's good. No, I mean, I would look at it and go, it is a bit of a thing, like evolved, changed, grown. Well, I mean, I think they're all kind of pseudonyms for like what's going on. What I'm trying to get at is like the essence of me, the person of me. Am I the same guy?
Yeah, okay, that's a deep one.
Am I the same guy?
So. You're the same guy. And so, what's there that I'm pinpointing and that's the same? I have to sit down and have a real think about that because I don't know, man.
Just crack a beer when the cameras are off.
You know what I mean? Like you could vaguely change your face, you could get some surgery, whatever. It's still you, but what's the fundamental thing that hasn't changed? I don't know.
Yeah,
sense of humor is a big one.
That's true. Yeah. Well, you would. I mean, I'm trying to categorize this for the people at home thinking about it. It's not as if. Obviously, I haven't changed. My personality, I think Liz, my wife, who's fantastic, said something about kids' personalities are set after, I think it's like 18 months.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Something like that. So if they're like a really happy kid, they'll probably be a very happy person generally. My kids are very happy. They're just very smiling. It's very, very sweet.
Happy.
But do you know what I mean? You see some kids that are a bit more reserved. And like those kids are going to be more reserved. Like that's just their personality is they're a bit more shy, a bit more reserved. And whilst a reserved person can kind of come out and be outgoing for a period, they're much more comfortable. They're like their equilibrium is reserved. My brother, great example, can be the life of the party, but I know him is more of an introvert.
Yeah, and an introverted extrovert.
Yeah, and he needs his time to just do his own thing, reset his batteries, and he's
very
much happier being by himself than I would be because I'm much more extroverted and I just love being around the boys and getting around the just getting around the people. That's what my whole thing is. I was a little bit, after dinner, long day, I'm a bit tired. Cameron comes over, I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. Kind of energized, I'm ready to go. I'm happy. That's me though. The difference between,
that's right.
And that's probably similar to you. It's extroverted people are different. And I remember you saying, this is a true story. I said, I went and just went very vulnerable and said to the boys, I remember my first day at daycare and I was just crying, terrible mess. Like it was really, really emotional for me. And Cameron just says, I was so cool. Got out of the car, basically moonwalked into the.
I didn't say that, but yeah, fair enough.
And he's high-fiving the people on the way out. Said, Mum, I'll see you at 3:30. Like the coolest guy. The coolest guy ever. And that's very funny to me. I just made me laugh.
My mum and I have a really close relationship. For some reason, I've been told these intricate bullshit details. And it's like she said, like, yeah, you were fine with it. Everyone was crying. You just walked in and was like, hey, see ya. I'll see you in like 3 hours.
It's so funny.
He made it seem like a really wanky, flex where he was like, I'm not a big fan of like putting these kids through, trauma and stuff. And obviously that's real bad. And I'm like, man, that shit ain't real. I don't care about that. It's garbage. It's not even real.
The coolest guy ever, apparently. This guy was 5 years old, moonwalking.
Well, I mean, if you think about like when you're 3 years old onwards, if I was calm back then, I mean, I don't think this is a positive or a negative, but I'm a calm guy. I'm almost comatose. It's hard to get me going in reality.
That's
this
very
is really
true.
the biggest. This is it.
That's true. I do know. Like I have got some friends. You probably have some friends that when they're like, we do have friends. When you're drunk, some people say like when I was younger, people would be like, "Hey, be careful." People get drunk, they become violent or whatever. Yeah. I have never been violent.
No, me neither.
And
maybe once.
I don't think I've got some funny stories about you being drunk. But we'll go into those another time that are very funny.
Sure.
But like
drunk
stories. How long do you have? That's a 10-part series. But we've got you're obviously not a violent person, not an angry person. You just we're just I think
a happy drunk.
Fairly similar. Just laughing. Probably loud is the main criticism of drunk Cameron and Carlton is you guys are very loud.
We are super loud. In fact, I don't know what the decibel reading is right now, but this is borderline
this is getting there.
Pretty loud. And I'm thinking 5 beers in. We've been told a couple of times
we've been told to calm down from the neighbours. So.
This is it. Out of a party of 20, we can hear you.
We know exactly who it was. Is it me?
It's that guy.
So, and that's all fine. But there are people that change and become, they just lose themselves a little bit, or they have a different part of themselves that comes out. I'm not sure what we're getting onto there.
Well, I was just full of back to like people changing over time. Interesting you're saying about the when you're 2 or 3 years old, you set personality. I think one of the biggest things that I realized is there's probably not like enough knowledge across society about general psychology stuff, because that's a psychology thing, right? Like it's like a study that they've gone like most people don't change personality over this and a certain metrics that we've decided in the personality spectrum, openness, consciousness, all that crap. We probably that stuff's interesting, and it's actually pretty realistic that no one seems to give a shit about. I think that's probably why partly Jordan Peterson became such a big deal, because he was the guy who was like, this is it. It's
very interesting, like
if you believe it or not, but
if you're out there and you are thinking like I don't like my job, it's probably actually a really good opportunity to pause and just reflect on like it's probably not the right job for you. like
Potentially.
personality
Yeah,
wise. Like,
for sure.
like if you're in a sales job and you're an introvert, it's probably not the best job for you.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
part of the job is like you need to be comfortable talking to people that you don't know,
You need to
and
feed off it.
building rapport and getting your energy from that.
Yeah.
And because you can tell when someone's talking, you can tell if they're kind of like BSing you, or
That's
if they
true.
really believe in it, or if they just have that kind of energy.
Yeah, would you
And
like to-
likewise, like there are, if you're an extroverted person, you probably don't want to work in accounts in a big corporation in a little cubicle.
entry?
It's probably not a good job for you. Even if it pays reasonably well, it's going to kind of weigh on your soul because it's not fit for you. Like you're
100%.
made for something. You have a purpose, a telos, philosophical term.
Yeah.
You're made for something.
Yeah.
And knowing oneself is the beginning of wisdom. I think there's some Socratic parallels there too. Like, I don't know a lot about anything. I know a little bit about myself, which I think is really cool. I know what I am not good at more than I know what I'm good at.
And you're already ahead of the bell curve there because most people don't know shit.
That's true.
I mean, if you really want to boil down this absolute influx of mainly American-driven motivational speakers, it's self-awareness is what they're driving.
Yeah,
they're like,
right.
what are you doing? Be self-aware. Do the shit you're
Yeah.
not good at better, and do the shit you're really good at more,
Yeah.
etc. And like it really, you want Gary
Min-max
Vee, this guy, he just like, I'm a self-awareness king. I'm really bad at certain things and I'm really good at certain things, and all I did was double down on the shit I was good at. That's effectively the whole message.
Yeah, it's actually, in a world of specialization, be really, really good at one thing.
And you'll
It's
probably
better.
chill and you'll be happy.
You'll
And that's
be
the,
better,
that's
yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
But
This
it's really
change.
interesting.
Change.
I'm
Change.
actually, man,
Change,
let's talk
change,
about
change.
that.
Okay, I think this is probably maybe an easier way, because marriage is like a thing that happens to you, so it's not really. If I was in a surfing accident and my leg was chomped off,
Do you like surfing?
I can't do it. So
That makes sense.
I got
Maybe that's why your
asked
legs
to go
chopped off.
surfing.
Did you?
Yeah, brother-in-law was like, "You want to come surf?" I'm like, I would kind of like to.
You'll
I
have to
can't
teach
surf
me.
though. Yeah, I can't
Might be
surf at all.
embarrassing. Yeah.
And I'm terrified of sharks.
Me
So it's
too,
probably a
yeah.
very bad pairing all round.
Yeah.
Love the beach, love swimming in the surf when there's people way further out than me.
You got to have that
I
idiot
feel
out there.
very safe. Yeah.
That 50-year-old dude in DTs who's just doing laps for no reason. Got to have that guy out there.
He's past the waves.
Yeah.
You're like, that's dangerous. What are you doing out there?
I do it
Haven't
every
you
day.
seen any shark movie ever? You're dead meat.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, I can
That's
swim.
not true,
I
by
can
the way,
actually
but
swim.
yeah.
I used to be pretty good. And I used to work at City Beach.
Yep.
And every single time I come, I used to have long hair and like kind of shaggy, and they'll be like, "Hey, dude, with the shit blue blue
Sup?
skitty bab bab." I'm like, "Dude, I don't actually surf." Dude.
Don't actually.
Like, and he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I'm
don't.
standing in the re-waxing your board and like re-treading your bloody skateboard, but
don't do
I
this.
can't do that shit, dude. Don't even talk
Yeah.
to me.
Okay.
Stop shoplifting too. I can see your phone at the
I
back.
see what you're doing, City Beach, man.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So
Change.
you could get your leg bit off by a shark.
Leg bit off by a shark.
Yeah.
Still
And-
Carlton.
Yeah, 100%.
Still Carlton. We've kind of already covered this.
Well, wait. So, but like,
what if I can?
I think you so it's your head and jar.
Yeah.
And like I can interface with you, but what I'm interfacing with you is your consciousness that I deem the essence of Carlton.
To be.
But like, what is your consciousness? Let's go into that real quick. I reckon for like a brief
What
period.
is consciousness?
It's not. I don't think your consciousness is.
It's not a.
It's not a
it's not a
paradox
material
that you
thing.
can measure.
This is what we talked about this, and we had an idea for a podcast about the material versus the immaterial. And I was saying, like, I think
That's
it's actually
what we were going to do
easy.
instead of this.
Yeah, I think it's actually relatively easy to say the immaterial exists,
Right.
even though we live in such a material and a materially dominated society that like, I want material evidence for X, otherwise I'm not believing it. I'm like, well, there are lots of things that we can't measure on a material scale that we all kind of believe.
Yeah.
We know that whilst you have 100% of your brain, you can remove parts of it and no one would know.
That's right. Some people have like strokes and tumors and don't even realize.
There was, I think, sent you a study because it's really interesting to me. A guy had like a rod or something through his head.
It's the psychological 101.
It's like through his brain, and the brain surgeons had to cut out, like, I think it was like 40% of his brain. And he woke up and he was just seemingly unaffected. I'm sure there's some probably little nuances that he suffered from. Yeah, maybe. But we didn't know. And it was not large enough to measure it. he just went on living somehow. He like had a pipe like through his head.
Yeah, it was like a rebar. Like just
It was
fucking
crazy. Yeah. And like you would think like, why aren't you dead?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, yeah, I don't know. And then
You don't.
it doesn't. Yeah, it was one of those really, really fascinating. And obviously, the point I'm trying to make is your mind is not your brain.
Right.
We think your brain is responsible for your mind because you can't. If when you die,
kill the brain.
you can't pull a person apart and go, "There's the mind." Yes, the mind. That big old 4 pounds.
I've got him.
4 pounder. But our best guess is the mind is the machination of the frontal cortex and all that.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? Of the brain. Even though you could remove parts of that frontal cortex and you're seemingly unaffected, your brain is still there, your conscious is still there.
I don't think we know shit. Isn't it like basically one of the forefronts? Like we know more about the friggin' surface of the moon than like the machinations of the brain, and like
We know more
less
about
even more
the
about the
moon
bloody.
than like the floor of the ocean or something.
There you go, that's
so
right,
lots of
yeah.
crazy stuff.
Yeah, but they don't. I mean, I think
Sure.
there's another example of someone having a similar injury and like going through a very specific part, and that was like the invention, the beginning of like the biological study of the brain, where like it actually destroyed a certain center, and he had no thing of time or something. He was like, I can't tell time, and like, well, that part you destroy must be the time center, or something. you know, shit like that.
I mean, I suppose we don't know because
Don't know
is
shit.
hard to,
It's like completely crazy.
It's hard to
Yeah.
measure it. Again, though, it's hard to measure it in a way that would be acceptable in a world dominated by material measurements. And there's like I could go on a whole tangent about like why I just detest the metric system, and it's just so cold and clinical, and everything has to be
doesn't give you
perfectly
good vibes,
squared. I'm
no.
like, I just don't like it. Anyway,
So
we're not doing that.
Yeah. I used to think that like the mind is the most complex machine in the universe. Effectively,
Sure,
they say,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's hard to comprehend. Can you, dilute it all the way down into nothing until you get to the fact of grains of sand, where it's like synapses, cracking synapses, and we can take this one away, and that's one idea you'll never have again. That was your childhood memory.
Gone.
This one is gone. This one is it like it's that
This is you
complicated?
crying at daycare. Gone.
Everything's melding with each other and having a little dance, but. It's not unforeseeable that someone somehow maybe can turn that into a mathematical, very discrete 1 + 1 equals pile of sand formula. It's just that complex.
It's
I can't
not.
comprehend
It's not impossible to comprehend. It is a little bit like monkeys in a typewriter over time. It's not really an argument for anything.
I know,
It's just saying like, hey, maybe in 1,000 years we'll have way better technology and we can understand stuff, or we should accept the fact that maybe we are but children to God, and there are things about the world that we can't comprehend, that are beyond our comprehension.
And that's pretty much what every religion in the world is actually saying, especially with the mind stuff.
Freeing, very peaceful.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I wouldn't like to think I'm ones and zeros. That's a bit of a trash box.
Because it is like if you get to a point where you think you can unpack the human consciousness down to ones and zeros, that is actually kind of sad.
Yeah, it is a little dehumanizing.
I guess it would probably be off the top of my head probably a fairly significant blow to the unique specialness of man, but I don't believe that to be the case. So we'll move it on.
What do you think about consciousness outside the body? Because that seems to be a big thing I hear about lately. Because like a couple Eastern religions think that consciousness
Heresy,
lives
I think is
within.
what that is called.
No, but I mean like so phantom limbs. Like you cut my limb off.
That's true. I've heard that.
Someone like does this, and I'm not paying. But like
I've heard phantom limb.
or your
is
consciousness
like
lives.
you get an itch, but you haven't got the hand anymore. But your hand itches.
Could be muscle, brain memory. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
it's very interesting though. It's very cool.
But
Your
if you
gut
get your-
instincts,
what
is a gut instinct?
Good point.
It's not a materially measurable anything.
I think
it
it's
is.
you just not thinking too
Well,
logically.
Freud said it was like your subconscious knowing, but yeah, but like interesting to me.
Ego, yeah.
But yeah, it's like you accept that things around you exist in a way that you cannot materially explain
Yeah.
every day. Like there are times where I've driven home from work, and you might have done the same thing, where you kind of don't really remember driving home.
Oh, that's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and you just like get
muscle.
home, you're like,
Did I kill people?
I just drove home, and like it happened once so
Wolf of
bad,
Wall Street.
so bad one time that I actually did not. I truly was just in my own little world, and had absolutely no idea. I got home, I actually felt a little bit scared. I'm like, I have no idea if
You just full
run red
daydream.
lights.
You daydream the entire thing.
Yeah, but you just kind of muscle memory it all the way through. Don't send me a letter if you're in the QPS about dangerous driving.
We didn't tell you what date it was.
It's 25 years ago. But there are things that happen that are beyond the material, I guess, material plane that we could go, this is the parameters.
Heaps of stuff that's unexplainable.
But I kind of feel like sometimes with big questions, and obviously I want to convert you from being spiritual to being
This
correct.
is the subtext. Yeah.
But there are, like, if you're asking for a material justification of God, say, like that might not be possible. Like you're asking for something that is not possible. Insofar as the last time God was made man, we crucified him. And I don't know if that's going to happen again for Cameron to physically see.
Can he come back so I can crucify him again? No,
just so I know.
Yeah, you do
that's
make
like
a really good point. And we did talk about that a little bit. And it really got into the fact of like, okay, so materialism versus non-materialism. Does God live in either one? And then where does belief come in? Turns out faith is the thing. And
Faith
so,
is the thing, yeah.
as much as that sounds super obvious, actually talking about it, I was like, okay.
It's decent.
It's a faith.
There's some
it's
things
a faith
going on
thing
there.
within reason in certain realms. Yeah, okay.
The way I
get
had it
this.
described to me actually when I was doing my catechism was that to understand God or to get yourself from here, where I was probably 10 years ago with you, like chilling, probably more spiritual, like had the idea of a Christian God just from growing up in a Christian country, being like, yeah, no, God, but like more or less lived essentially the way, not just like, I just lived like, it was like a spiritual thing, like, yeah, God's out there, but I'm not really doing anything.
You just
specifically, I'm just chilling.
Yeah, actively just chilling.
But there are, I think, very clear steps you can take through reason to bring you closer to God. But there's always going to be that last little spot.
Jump.
And the priest that I did my catechism with, a brilliant man, Father Armstrong, speaks like 7 languages, has a PhD in a bunch of different stuff. Very, very cool. He was in the Australian Concerto before he became a priest. So he's a really good violinist. Anyway, he was telling me like some people are more reason based. Like they just, I'm not a real spiritual kind of, I don't really get like, I just get the feelings today of like, it's, praise God, even though I don't feel like it. I'm more of a reasonable, down to earth, reasonable sounds about like I'm a more reason kind of focused individual where I'm like, I want to know why X equals Y, A squared, B squared. I want to know what's going on. And that actually brought me closer to God. And then the jump between reason to God was a small step of faith, as opposed to some people who are like, it's the feels. I'm more of a faith-based person and I'm happy to take a bigger jump. Because I have fewer stairs of reason, say, on their way to God.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting to think about because I haven't really thought about that exact leap before, but it's something that you do. Or some people do, and I get that. That. There's definitely people who are in the feels, and there's definitely people who want to question hard.
They're called women. And we love them. They are terrific.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I use this as an example, right? Like, and this is, I think...
Women are the best of us, to be fair. Within
they're very, 100%. It's the reason we have to protect them at all costs. One of the things, this is kind of goes back to like the change and stuff, right? And kind of a material. I don't necessarily enjoy going to mass every single Sunday at 7 a.m.
Yeah. Neither do our children.
But when I look back at the year, I'm very, very glad that I went to mass every Sunday at 7 a.m.
The gains are real.
In the moment, it can be difficult to pray every day. But looking back, you're like, you know what? Really glad I did that.
Okay.
Really glad I did that.
It's a bit like without
going to the gym.
Yeah, without like.
Well, this is actually, it's not diminishing it. This is like very practical wisdom from the faith. It goes like, so your body grows under duress, so your faith grows under a challenge spiritually. You can't grow without stress.
No one grows in a comfortable state.
You can't. Can't be done.
That's why we're all trash.
We're all trash. We're too comfortable.
Yes. Well, that's like the many quotes where it's like life wasn't meant to be easy, but for the majority of us it has been.
Way too easy. Yeah, no, very much so. But we kind of got it. Like a lot of these questions philosophically come back to the essence of the thing. Like, what is the essence of a pile? It's plural. It's more than one is a pile. So if the essence is more than one, two is now a pile. Two is closer to 1 million than it is to one.
Yeah.
Very,
I
very
think
cool.
we kind of solved it. The only thing I was going to say is, apart from this, there is another philosophical thing we didn't really go down, and it's not really amazingly interesting to me. But like I said, if you were to take 1 grain of sand divided into 2, now you've made the exact same amount of material into a pile-like form. You could divide those 2 things into 5. You've made it into pile-like form. Yeah. Then there comes to another paradox. I think there's a paradox of like someone's arrow. There's an arrow of time paradox we might talk about one week, where it's like, what can you measure? Like, what parts of change can you actually measure? Like, if I shoot an arrow, at what point do I measure it's been from here to you? Has to go from here to here, to here, to here, to here. Like, where's
you can continually shrink it.
Yeah, when did it actually move? When did it actually move?
So some crazy
and then there's that
stuff,
Planck constant, which is like a scientific, the smallest measurable thing is the possible. Anyway, but that's a whole other thing. We should talk about that one day. That's a really interesting one. That's a good time-based one. Very good. But I reckon we've done this, and I really
Paradox,
enjoyed that.
Happy with the big old Brendan Doss. Just give us a big old solved.
Yeah, you can come in. You can edit this idiot in the background.
Great. Well, look, Cameron, thanks for being here, mate. That's 2 Blokes in the cave. Hoping to get out of the cave. Until next time.
So far, we're a pile.
See you later.